Hey guys, so it's 6:58. We'll start in a couple minutes. Obviously, I'll wait so we can try to maximize how many people we get. One thing I'd like you to do, if you can, is on the Google Classroom, the one that has the link for tonight's review class. I posted a DBQ, a practice DBQ up. So the posting says on Tuesday, May 12th, I will be on YouTube Live. And you'll see the thumbnail of Teddy Roosevelt, and then you'll see a PDF that says practice number 2, May 2nd, 2020. We're going to use that tonight to kind of work on skills, and then I'll answer any general questions or whatever else you guys want. So if you can, I've got my little paper copy because I miss paper. I'm sick of looking at computer screens. I don't know if you guys are. But if you're able to access it, either have a paper copy or pull it up on a screen. I don't know how to share a screen on YouTube Live. I don't even know if you can or not. You guys all know more computer stuff than I do. If there is a way, tell me, and I'll be forever in debt. Okay. But in the meantime, like I said, we'll start shortly. Great day. Yeah. Got done working, fired up the grill, made the best barbecued chicken, and ate dinner while I watched the snow come down. Yeah, it's after Mother's Day, barbecuing in the snow. It's only Syracuse, only in 2020, I guess, right? Pandemics, murder hornets, and snow in May. Hope you guys are having a good day. Don't be stressed out. Be nice and chill. Be relaxed. Before we start, I'll go over a couple things here. Tomorrow, I haven't put the links up yet. I will do that. I'm going to offer two different Zooms for DBQ help. One will be at 10 a.m. for those of you who are early birds, and the other one will be at 1 p.m. In addition to that, I'm going to go on YouTube Live again tomorrow night. On Thursday, you guys know we have a half day at school. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Zoom on Thursday at 10 a.m. No YouTube Live or anything like that. Really Thursday night, guys, I want you going to bed early, get a good dinner, chill out, watch something that you love for a movie or a TV show. And on Friday, I'm going to go on at 10 a.m. just to kind of be available for anybody who has general questions on Zoom about anything, or if you just feel like talking. And I'm going to kick you off. I want you guys to make sure that on Friday you have time to yourself. You need to be at your computer at 1:30 on Friday because the test starts at 2. They said they need like a half an hour for you guys to walk through. There's security procedures. There's some other stuff that you have to do. I'd really like you there, ready to go at 1:30. That's what time you're supposed to be there. But I want you to have enough time so that, you get a good lunch. You kind of get your workstation, whatever you're going to do, set up, we talked about printing out your study guides ahead of time. Have the Google Doc or the Word doc already opened up. Remember, at the top of every page, have your initials and your 8-digit AP identification there. Have everything good to go, and have enough time where before that test, you can do something that, quite frankly, doesn't require any intellect. Catch a quick episode of The Office or something else on Netflix or Amazon Prime, just something where you get to kind of let your brain kind of clear out. Okay. See you guys all signing in again. Remember, I'm going to need your questions, your comments, your answers. That's how I kind of, gauge participation. So bomb away at me. And we're going to go over a DBQ, but I want tonight and tomorrow night to be a little bit more of the open forum kind of, hey, Mr. Ash, I need you to go over this. Hey, Mr. Ash, quick, go over that. If you notice on my Google Classroom, I've put a new Google slide up every day. Yesterday, we had economic policy for APUSH periods 6 and 7. A lot of hyperlinks and videos. Today, I did elections and political parties. Tomorrow on the classroom, there's checks and balances, separation of powers, federalism, and other government-type constitutional stuff, and examples of it from history. And then on Thursday, I'm still trying to finish it, but there'll be like a Google slide up there with some stuff that you might be able to use for contextualization, to get that analytical point. references to some historians, to pop culture, music, books, magazines, newspapers, uh, stuff like that. Things that might kind of help you really show off what you know. Okay, make connections to essays. Um, College Board has some great stuff up on there. Last week, the two teachers who've been doing the College Board review class put 2 practice tests up there. We're actually going to look at one of those practice tests tonight. So again, thanks to them for doing that. But there's so many great resources. If you feel there's a time period between periods 3 through 7 that you're not quite as strong at, go to the College Board site, check out the videos, and guys, bomb away questions with me. If you watch a video or you're studying your notes or your packets and you go, oh my gosh, I forgot what Schechter Poultry versus the US is, email me. Hit me up on Google Classroom. Whatever you guys want, I'm going to be there for you. Okay? All right. So, again, on the Google Classroom page, the one that's got the thumbnail for tonight's YouTube Live, there's a PDF if you want to open that up. And again, I can't share. I don't know how to, I should say. Never say can't, right? I don't know how to share a screen on YouTube Live. I don't know if you can. With the way this pandemic nonsense is going, I guarantee you somebody at YouTube is going to get smart and come up with a way to do that. So tonight, let's talk about the DBQ, okay? Remember, you're going to have 45 minutes to write and 5 minutes to upload. The key is you have to make sure you hit that submit button. Now listen, if you hit submit and it's taken a while, as long as you have hit submit before the 50-minute time period, you're okay. Remember, do not hit the back arrow. Do not hit the refresh button, okay? If you have a problem, that's when, you can contact Tech Support ESM. That's when, you can file your appeal to do a makeup test. You have 48 hours from the time of the test to contact College Board. Make sure everything's good. The other thing is, like, my son's taking an AP class. When you guys take this test on Friday, turn off the Wi-Fi on the extra devices. We forget how many of our devices have Wi-Fi. Turn off the Wi-Fi on your phone. Hide your little brother or sister's tablet. Okay. Ask mom and dad for help. Make your bandwidth as good as you can. If you have, like in my house, we have a computer that's actually directly hooked up. Use that if you can. And if you don't, like I said, just make sure some of your Wi-Fi kind of sapping devices are off. There'll be a screen with a timer, but I told my son, have a backup timer. Whether you got to use your phone or, we have those little cheap 99-cent kitchen timers. Again, just to have an extra reminder. Okay, here's my time. All right. So let's start. So if you have access to that DBQ, again, thanks to College Board people for putting this together. You have 5 documents. You have to use 4. And one quick thing about that. We did a practice DBQ on Friday. Understand, the one thing you don't want to do is rush too much. Write your thesis, do your contextualization. There's 2 points out of 10 right there. You get a point if you use 2 documents. So now you're 3. You get a point if you use those 2 documents in a way that supports your argument, meaning you don't just quote the documents, you don't just describe, but you actually really get into it and show, hey, this document supports this part, this is a document that shows the changes that occurred during this time period because blah, 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 blah. This document shows the continuities because blah, 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 blah. So look at that. 2 points off a document. If you then, for just those 2 documents, do one part of HIP, you really explain the historical context for the intended audience, the point of view or the purpose, and explain why it matters for your thesis. For one doc, now you're 3 points. For another doc, 4 points. Well, if you've done a thesis and contextualization, you're already at 6 points. Okay? Maybe you can think of outside information off of that. There's information beyond the documents that reinforces this point because blah, 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 blah. Think about it. You could, with context and a thesis, you could get 8 out of 10 by being awesome on 2 docs. I guarantee you get 8 out of 10 on the AP test. Dudes, A, you're passing. B, you're more likely getting to 4 or better. I will guarantee that. Okay? I mean, goodness gracious. but be smart about that. Don't panic. Remember, no drive-bys. Always go back to, this is why it matters for my thesis. Make sure in your contextualization that you're being specific. Give me vocab words. Make sure that for your two pieces of outside information, you're being very clear, very overt, and really hammering home. No drive-by sentences, okay? All right, so tonight we got a DBQ, and if you have access to it, great. If you don't have access to it, that's still okay. Okay? All right. So there's no prompt on this one in terms of what printed out, but I want you just to look at the documents. So if you don't have access, I'm going to read it out loud to you. All right. Document 1 from the College Board. The source is Charles Grandison Finney. It's a primary source called Revivalist. Charles G. Finney emphasizes human choice in salvation, 1836. So here's what the document says. Thus the world is divided into two great political parties. The difference between them is that one party choose Satan as the god of this world, yield obedience to his laws, and are devoted to his interest. Selfishness is the law of Satan's empire, and all impenitent sinners yield it a willing obedience. The other party choose Jehovah for their governor and consecrate themselves with all their interests to his service and glory. All right. So again, we have a document here. I'll read it to you one more time. In the first part of our little exercise tonight, all I want you to do, guys, is tell me what, if any, main ideas do you see in this, or what's a takeaway you can get from it? So not even the hip part, but what's the key takeaways? So again, source is Charles Grandison Finney. It's a primary source called Revivalist. Charles G. Finney emphasizes human choice in salvation, 1836. Thus the world is divided into two great political parties. The difference between them is that one party choose Satan as the god of this world, yield obedience to his laws, and are devoted to his interest. Selfishness is the law of Satan's empire, and all impenitent sinners yield it a willing obedience. The other party choose Jehovah for their governor and consecrate themselves with all their interests to his service and glory. Hit me up in the comments. Give me like a main idea or a takeaway or piece of information you got from this document. I know the language is a little bit tricky, but you can't go wrong tonight. So let me see what you got, guys. Ooh, that good one. All right. Let's break it down a little bit here. Let's look at for historical circumstances, historical context, I should say. What's going on around this document and why it might influence us. So let's do the main idea first here. Okay. Bennett, this was written during the Second Great Awakening. Thank you, Bennett. All right. So if we talk about the historical context of the document, it's 1836. Okay. Which is during the Second Great Awakening. Now, again, we start putting our heads in place. Maybe we take our one-page study guide out from period 4. We look at Second Great Awakening, and we talk about, okay, it's a time of religious revivalism. Very similar to the First Great Awakening from colonial times, in that there was an emphasis on emotion, there was an emphasis on salvation, that as a Christian, you had to move away from sin. You could also talk about how it led to the creation of new Protestant churches. Established Protestant churches began to fracture and split up into new groups. Peeps, help me out with historical context. Anyone remember where the Second Great Awakening began? And was kind of, what was like ground zero for the Second Great Awakening? What state or what specific part of a state? Because again, we're getting good historical context if you know this. Yeah, good job. Where is the burned over district, Rob and Garrett? Zach? Or anybody? Good job, Faith. So the burned over district, what we now think of as upstate and western New York, called the burned over district because of the nature of the sermons during this time period. They're, quote, hellfire and brimstone. The idea that if you don't have salvation, you're going to burn in hell. And the author here, Charles Grandison Finney, more commonly just called Charles G. Finney, he was the most famous preacher of the Second Great Awakening. Okay? So if you look at this, now we have some historical context. We know what's going on. And Finney's saying, look, the world is divided into two great political parties, not maybe real political parties, but symbolic ones. The people who choose Satan and the people who choose Jehovah, which is another word for God. The people who choose Satan, they're going to obey his laws and are devoted to his interests, including his law of selfishness, putting property, putting self, putting money ahead of the good of others. The people who choose God, they consecrate, they make themselves holy in all of his interests. So an important thing to understand, and a big difference between the two Great Awakenings. The first Great Awakening in colonial times was more about you need to stop sinning, you need to create more faith so that you will repent for your sins and that you will have a better relationship with God. What the Second Great Awakening does, though, is guys like Finney, and they preach their, oh my goodness gracious, it's snowing out here. Holy cow. But they make these big sermons with the idea that as a Christian, it is your duty and your obligation to speak out and fight against sin when you see it. It's no longer good enough to just say, hey, I'm a holy person, I don't sin. But if you don't speak out and fight against sin, you're as guilty as the sinner. So hit me up here, guys. In 1836, during the Second Great Awakening, what are some things that people would have identified as being sinful that needed to be fought against, that, Second Great Awakening reformers would be all over saying, hey, we have to do something about it? Get me in the comments, guys. Okay, Liv gives me slavery. Love that. Bennett, drinking and slavery. Zach, I love the vocab word temperance. Okay. Can you guys think of any other reform movements during this time period besides, well, what's that word we use for people who want to fight slavery? Good job, Jake. Abolitionists. All right. So we've got the abolitionist movement. We've got temperance, the people who want to ban alcohol. We've got we got a lot of abolitionists typing in there now. Okay. So we've got people who are against slavery. What else? What's another reform movement from this time period, guys, that we could jump all over here? Faith, settlement houses aren't going to come till much later. That's during period 6 and 7. It's one of the results of the Industrial Revolution with all the problems of urbanization. So Jane Addams, settlement houses, stuff like that, you're not going to see till the late 1800s, early 1900s. Best kind of use if you talk about it for a period, like I said, right on that border of period 6 and 7 with the social gospel movement. Zach, public education, another one. It's Horace Mann. Can you guys think of any others? Dude, not so much religious, but can you think of like a group of people who, were all about faith in a different way? Zach, public asylums, Dorothy Dix, good. What do you call those people, though, who were about trying to find reforms in a different way and they spoke out against slavery? Good job, Garrett. The Transcendentalists. Name a famous Transcendentalist or two for me. Give me one famous Transcendentalist, guys. Good. Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau. If you remember Emerson, when we read Battle Cry of Freedom, there was a chapter called Mexico Will Poison Us. That was a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson about the Mexican War. Henry David Thoreau, we said, spent a night in jail because he refused to pay his taxes because he thought that was going to go to fund the Mexican War. And that's why Thoreau wrote that essay, Civil Disobedience. But if you really look at all of those reform movements, one of the things they have in common is there's like a religious element to it, especially when it comes to temperance, because they used to call it demon rum. And with the big influx, hey, here's your contextualization point. 1830s, 1840s into the 1850s, you see a dramatic increase in immigration, Irish and German immigrants coming in. And a lot of these people who were reformers are members of the Whig Party, and they tend to be like more white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. They tend to be a little bit more nativist thinkers, and they kind of push back against all this immigration. So the fact that there's more Irish and German immigrants and the kind of cultural stereotypes that go against those people, that kind of pushes more and more for temperance. Okay. All right. So again, go back to historical context of this document. We said it's during the Second Great Awakening. Charles G. Finney, he's one of the most important preachers of this movement, that perhaps this was actually written right in the burned over district, and that as a result of that Second Great Awakening, now we can do outside information, talk about how there were abolitionist churches. Some of the most famous abolitionists had religious, methods to their style, like William Lloyd Garrison. You could talk about all the different reforms, like temperance, like public education, like abolition, that kind of get pushed out because of the Second Great Awakening. Okay? You intended audience, I wouldn't mess with, because in that document, again, if you can look at it, you don't see a specific intended audience. And unless you do, or unless you really know for sure and you know why it's important, don't mess with that. But point of view, when I did my little notes before this, as soon as I saw Charles G. Finney, I'm like, oh my gosh, point of view. That's the point of view of a preacher from the Second Great Awakening, the most famous preacher from the Second Great Awakening. So for that document, if I'm going to source that to get that contextual, to get that bonus point on the doc, I'm all over historical context, and I'm going to say, this is done by Charles G. Finney. It's the point of view of one of the most famous preachers of the Second Great Awakening, who's challenging people not just to be, Christian within, but also to fight against evils. All right, I'm going to read another doc to you. I'm looking just for the main idea or like a takeaway from the doc. Not even so much the hit part yet, okay? Here we go. Document 2 is a source. It's Andrew Jackson's speech to Congress on Indian removal. Here's a quote. It gives me pleasure to announce to Congress that the benevolent policy of the government, steadily pursued for nearly 30 years in relation to the removal of the Indians beyond the white settlements, is approaching to a happy consummation. It puts an end to all possible danger of collision between the authorities of the general and state governments on account of the Indians. It will place a dense and civilized population in large tracts of country now occupied by a few savage hunters. By opening the whole territory to the settlement of the whites, it will incalculably strengthen the southwestern frontier and render the adjacent states strong enough to repel future invasions without remote aid. It will separate the Indians from immediate contact with settlement of whites, free them from the power of the states, enable them to pursue happiness in their own way and under their own rude institutions, will retard the progress of decay, which is lessening their numbers, and perhaps cause them gradually, under the protection of the government and through the influence of good counsels, to cast off their savage habits and become an interesting, civilized, and Christian community. All right. In a quick little blurb on the comments, what's a main idea, a key idea, what's a takeaway you got from that document, which was entitled Andrew Jackson's Speech to Congress on Indian Removal? All right, Alex, Abby, good job. So it's about the Indian Removal Act of 1830. It's about white expansion. Now, if we're talking about expansion, of course, we're going to throw what vocab word in. Come on, someone's going to hit me with that in a second. Um, it's about the question not of assimilation, Abby. Now, understand something. Andrew Jackson believed in removal of Indians. If you look at his document, he's saying, look, it's going to separate Indians from immediate contact with white settlements. And then he tries to put a nice spin on it. Oh, it's going to help them pursue happiness in their own way. But basically, if you remember, good job with the Manifest Destiny, Sanson. Good job, Grabowski. All right. But the thing it's going to end up doing is Jackson's trying to justify why he's removing Indians. Do you remember where, now not just, where Indians were removed to? They had to cross west of what geographic feature? When Jackson talks about taking these people off their land and removing them so they won't come into contact, he wants to push them so far that they go west of what, guys? Garrett, good job, the Mississippi River. Okay, so the Indian Removal Act was passed in 1830, signed by Jackson into law. And basically, the whole idea was Jackson didn't believe in assimilation. He didn't think that Indians and whites could coexist. So his thing was push them out west. That way, you'll avoid conflict. It'll promote Western expansion. And Jackson said, that it will be their land, as this is what he promised Native Americans, as long as the grass is green and the water runs. Now, we know that's not going to be true because later on in American history, we're going to keep pushing west of the Mississippi, force Indians onto reservations, eventually force them off certain reservations because they had, valuable resources there. But the original Indian territory was now what we call Oklahoma. Okay. Can you guys name for me a piece of outside information for this document? Name a group that would have been impacted by Jackson in this document. Quick little piece of outside info. Name a group that would have been impacted by Jackson's document here. Okay, good job. Cherokee Indians. So that's some outside info. We'll talk about that in a second. In terms of historical context, why would Jackson be issuing this statement about Indian removal in 1830? What are some big events? What are some things that are going on in 1830 that would prompt Jackson to go, oh, I'm going to make this statement and I'm going to enforce this policy. We're going to remove Indians out west. Can you guys give me some historical context? Again, for our HIP, think H. Give me a word or two, something that's going on that would prompt Jackson to do this. Okay, Garrett, there have been conflicts between natives and whites. In fact, that's how Jackson really got his reputation. I mean, after the War of 1812, Jackson was involved in several battles. There was the Red Stick Wars and stuff like that. Give me some other specific thing. What's the development going on in America around or shortly before 1830 when this was made, where Jackson would say, well, this is a reason why we have to remove Native Americans, or what's the reason why some Americans would want Jackson to do this? Are there any economic things going on? Are there any philosophies going on? Any movement patterns among Americans? Because again, this is historical context, guys. Thinking about here's a doc. What are the events that surround it? It's a guy who hasn't had a haircut in forever in his 6-year-old's bedroom. All right, Bennett, love it. Manifest destiny. Remember, if I say manifest destiny, you say go west, young man, go west. This is well after the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. That's what kind of kicked off manifest destiny. So now you have Americans who, when Jefferson makes that Louisiana Purchase, they kind of look and go, oh, look at all that empty land. Let's just ignore the Native Americans. Let's ignore the people from Mexico, the French people who are there. Oh, look at that empty land. Zach, great point. King Cotton. Remember that market revolution after the War of 1812? That thing is amazing. It's one of the most boring topics that we covered the whole year, and it causes more change and more problems than darn near anything else. Part of the market revolution was the idea that you were going to specialize in crops. It's not just, okay, up in the north, they've got textile mills and we're going to make clothes. And, you got girls in Lowell, Massachusetts working the factories. But in the south, people specialize on certain cash crops they can make the most money on. And the king is cotton. And we said cotton is it's like a nuclear bomb for the soil. Cotton depletes the soil quickly, which means you constantly need more land, and that's going to become a reason for people to move out west. And who's going to be there in that way? Well, the Cherokee Indians are going to be in western Georgia. Southerners get what's called Alabama fever, and they want to push out west. So now you're going to have that conflict of cultures. Okay? So historical context. Heck yes, you could use that. Intended audience. It says to Congress, you could, I guess, try to say this is important because Jackson is now pushing Congress to make the Indian Removal Act. Point of view. Guys, point of view is huge here. If you see anything regarding Native Americans and Andrew Jackson, jump all over it. Why? Okay, he's Andrew Jackson. His policy was Indian removal. He got Congress to pass the Indian Removal Act. Prior to being president, Jackson really kind of got his fame for going to war with Native Americans. Jackson, later on, of course, is going to be the guy who ignores the Supreme Court. Wholly outside information, Batman. In the case of Worcester versus Georgia, ignores John Marshall's ruling. In fact, says, John Marshall made his ruling, let him enforce it. And because Jackson does that, that's what leads to the Cherokee Trail of Tears, where a quarter of the Cherokee population dies. So look at that. Just off that document, really build, really expand on it. Some of you guys, you got to do that more. Don't be stingy. If you are super phenomenal, think of it this way. You get a whole point if you use all 4 documents. If you only use 2 docs, you get a point. If you use 2 docs and you really use it in a way to support your thesis, you get another point. And if for those 2 docs, you do a really good job explaining one part of HIP, bang, bang. Versus, oh, I used all 4. If you do it, great. But make sure you hammer the living heck out of that. Plus, use your outside info, connect it to the docs even. Now you're like at 6 points. Maybe one of those 2 docs that you're hammering and you're going crazy on gives you a connection to another time period. Now you pick up that second analytical point, or what I call the synthesis point. Look at that. Boom. Okay? All right. Document 3. Again, I'm going to read it. All I'm going to ask you guys to do is give me a main idea. All right. Title of this document is the Declaration of Sentiments. The history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of man toward woman, having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over her. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has never permitted her to exercise her inalienable right to the elective franchise. He has made her, if married, in the eye of the law, civilly dead. He has taken from her all rights and property, even to the wages she earns. He closes against her all the avenues to wealth and distinction, which he considers most honorable to himself. As a teacher of theology, medicine, or law, she is not known. All right, takeaways, main ideas from document 3, which was an excerpt from the Declaration of Sentiments. Again, not even looking for the hip part yet, but what's a main idea? What's just a thing you can jump on and go, oh my gosh, okay, I can use this if I'm writing an essay. Okay, I got from Logan the whole idea of a desire to have that there's inequality, and so there's a desire to have equality between men and women. Okay, give me something else. Faith, women's rights, love it. Be specific now, guys. Give me a right mentioned in that document besides voting, because yes, he has never permitted her to exercise her inalienable right to the elective franchise. A fancy way of saying he's never given. We're denied. Faith, good job. The right to property. Um, he has taken from her all her right in property, even the wages she earns, so that when a woman did work legally, that money was her husband's, not hers. Okay. Um, he has made her, if married, in the eye of the law, civilly dead, meaning once a woman got married, her legal status reverted back to what a minor child would be. So a woman would have more rights as an adult if she were not married, but once she married, she essentially had like the legal status of a minor. Um, when they say he closes against her all the avenues to wealth and distinction, in other words, women aren't being given the right to have careers, especially the careers that men think are most important. She can't be a teacher of theology, meaning she can't be a minister. She can't be in medicine, a doctor, law, a lawyer, a politician. Okay. So those are main ideas. Now, what part of hip would you guys use? And I've got in my mind two big ones. What part of hip? Historical context, intended audience, perspective, point of view, or purpose would you see there? Okay, Bennett says point of view. Bennett, can you jump on that or somebody else? What point of view do you see there? Now, don't just tell me the point of view. Remember, you got to tell me why it's important. What point of view do you see in that document? Okay, everybody's typing POV. Yay, good job. We can all type POV. Now, tell me why it matters. Whose point of view is it, and why is that point of view important? And can you back it up with like some specifics? This is from the point of view of blank, and now it connects to some vocab words. Okay, Bennett. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, one of the organizers of the Seneca Falls Convention. She's one of the leaders in the women's rights movement. Um, Name another person who was important at the Seneca Falls Convention besides Elizabeth Cady Stanton, guys. Because clearly, if she's one of the organizers here, it's going to be at least in some way, shape, or form her point of view. Susan B. Anthony, good. You could have also said Lucretia Mott. Now, why does this point of view matter? What's going on that would cause these women to have this point of view? In a way, you can almost say, connect it back to historical context. What's going on at this time period, guys, that would prompt women to write this document, to express this point of view? We've already seen, okay, there's a lot of rights that women don't have. We also said women at this time period didn't have legal custody of their children. They could not initiate divorce on their own. Go to historical context. What do you see? What's the big picture ideals here? We know the Seneca Falls Convention was in 1848. It's a women's rights convention. What are factors or events that are going on around this time period that would influence women to have this convention, to write this document, to express what they want? What other causes are women involved in? Help me out, guys. 1848. We've already talked about another event that happened before this time period, a big event that's going to spawn a lot of these reforms. Okay, Marist, good job. They wrote the Declaration of Sentiments. This is that antebellum time period. And we said there's a couple factors that are going to spur women to get involved. One, what president? All right, Alex, good job. You've got the Second Great Awakening there. And that we said is going to spawn reform movements. And a lot of the key reformers were women because, again, the idea was it's your job to speak out against sin and injustice. And women during this time period, when they think about stuff like sin and injustice, morally bad things, they're worried about the safety of their children, the physical safety of their children, the moral safety of their children. What's that thing society's been pushing on women, especially middle-class women, to say, this is your job. You've got to do it. You've got to protect your family. You've got to protect your children. What was that, guys? The belief that it's a woman's special God-given right, God-given talent that pushes a lot of these women. Bennett's giving you a hint. Or he accidentally hit the enter key. Yes, Bennett, good job. The cult of domesticity. Okay. That's not only context, you could say contextualization, look, this is a part of the Seneca Falls Convention. Women are outlining the rights that they demand. Why are they doing this? They've been motivated by the reforms of the Second Great Awakening. They've been motivated because the cult of domesticity, which in many ways is like a sexist gender role, has pushed them to say, fine, if we're responsible for the safety and the upbringing of our children, then we're going to speak out. Hey, this was in 1848, the end of period 4. What politician has kind of been the big theme, the big flavor of period 4 and motivated people to say, you're right, I do have rights. I can make a difference. We said, all these reforms of this time period. It's the Second Great Awakening, so you have the religious aspect. It's the cult of domesticity. But at least in theory, what president has made a lot of people say, I do matter? At least because of the way he campaigned. Help me out, guys. Who's the big president for period 4? 1800 to 1848. We said it's the age. It starts with Jefferson, but what president takes this whole idea of the common man and more people are going to be involved in government, and therefore, hey, yeah, Jackson. Okay? So we said, with all these antebellum reforms, it's a combination. It's a little bit of Jackson juice. It's some hot sauce from the Second Great Awakening. It's, bam, the cult of domesticity. It's the fact that, guys, what event has led to there being more middle-class women who have the time to get involved in reforms? What economic development has happened during period 4 that would create more middle class women who are going to be involved in reforms? So again, this is all context. This is all outside information. I take one of these documents. I hammer the living bejesus out of the thing. Good job. Live the market revolution. So now, if I do this, I've used a document. Let's say I've used 2 documents. Boom, there's a point. Boom, there's a point. I got outside information point. I got a hippo point. And then maybe I say to myself, is there another time period when middle-class women said, we've got to fight injustice? Can you think of another time period outside this time period? Let's say, period 6, period 7, when a group of middle-class women said, this is not right. We have to do something. Let's get involved in reforms to help people. Type in the comments, because then I can get that second analytical point. Come on. Literally, just brainstorm the living heck out of that document, guys. You saw that document's from the Seneca Falls Convention. The progressive era of faith, good. Can you name a movement from within the progressive era that involved a lot of middle-class women who said, we got to do something as Christians to help families. Yeah, now we're back to settlement houses. Lib, I love prohibition too. Hey, quick, if we do settlement houses, now let's be specific. Let's drop vocab. We're talking about settlement houses. Name a woman. See, again, that's how you're making this connection. Who's active in the settlement house movement? She's middle to upper class, but she feels like it's her duty as a Christian to get involved to help people, to fight problems in the cities, like in Chicago. Jane Addams in Hull House. Good. Hey, Jane Addams and these reformers in the cities in the late 1800s, early 1900s. What's the name of that broader movement that they're involved in, guys? The idea that as a Christian, you have to fight poverty. You have to help your fellow man. Come on, now all of a sudden, like we're really cooking here. We're hammering this point. Jane Addams and the settlement house workers, they're part of a larger movement. It kind of bridges the gap between the Gilded Age and the Progressive Era. It's the idea that in the cities, you got to fight to clean up corruption. You got to fight to help against poverty. It's not social Darwinism. Yeah, good job, Faith. The social gospel movement. Hopefully you're getting the idea. Some of you guys, and I get it, because you see that time when you're going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Get your context, get your thesis, and then take two documents and annihilate them. Okay? All right. Next doc. Again, if you're able to look at home, great. I've got a chart here. The chart says voter participation in presidential elections from 1824 through 1840. Okay? In 1824, 26.9% of the people who could vote did vote. This sounds like a document we practiced on Zoom today. And by 1840, 80.2% of the people who were eligible, who could vote, did vote. Hippo that sucker for me. What's important about this? You're seeing a document that shows that from 1824, the percentage of people who were eligible to vote, who actually did vote, went from 26% to 80%. 1824 to 1840. What's the historical context that's going on? Because that's the only one I wrote down. What are key ideas? Who are important people, leaders? What factors are there that caused more people to vote? And if you were with me on Zoom today, we did this document. Alex, this is the age of Jackson. 1824, which is the first date on the document. That's the year Jackson lost the very controversial election. Remember the corrupt bargain. 1828, voter participation goes from 26% to 57%. That's the year of the, quote, revolution of 1800 when Jackson beats John Quincy Adams. What new political party did Jackson form? Hit me in the comments. Jackson starts campaigning right away, creates a brand new political party. Okay, Jordan, thank you. Jackson, his campaign style was to campaign to the common man. Why? What party did Jackson form? Good job, the Democrats. Gracie, all right. But what else? What's a factor that's going on that would make Jackson say, I'm going to campaign to the common man? What's a factor that would make it so that voter participation goes up? Why are people voting more? What's going on during this time period, guys? What big changes happened to make people say, yeah, I can vote, I'm going to vote, I want to vote? And what would make Andrew Jackson, as Jordan points out, want to campaign directly to the common man? Come on, hit me in the comments, guys. All right, Alex mentions, now the common man's vote matters. Why? Can somebody, Alex or anybody, elaborate? Why is it that the common man's vote mattered? Because we need to expound on that. We can't just drop that as a sentence. We got to explain why. So now we're creating context, and if we build this context, it's going to literally take us. Use your context to just throw it into outside information. Jake, universal male suffrage, good. Meaning, as time goes on, basically, if you're a white male, you can vote. Jake, good job. So now tell me this, guys. What's going on at this time? Why is it that we're moving towards universal male suffrage? Why are more people voting, or at least white males? What's the big change that's going on during this time period? Prior to this time period, what was always the requirement? You had to be a male, you had to be white, and there was one other requirement that most of the states had. You had to own property. And what happens is during this time period, good job, Faith, the property requirement was being dropped starting in the West. Remember, the whole idea that the West, our frontier, was always more democratic. That was one of the ideas of Frederick Jackson Turner, the famous historian, his frontier thesis. So now, one by one, as the states drop their property requirement, that means more and more males can vote. Also, during this time period, states begin to change their election laws, especially in the West, to say, hey, from now on, the popular vote will determine our state's electoral vote. So now not only can more males vote, but their vote actually matters. So if I can vote and I can actually vote and affect who the president's going to be, what's going to happen? Voter participation goes up. 1832, Jackson runs for president, 55%. In 1840, the Whig Party runs Martin Van Buren, their wannabe copycat Jackson. He's got a nickname, Old Tippecanoe. He's a general. He's a war hero. He's actually a rich guy, but they run the log cabin and hard cider campaign where they make it seem like he's like this tough old guy who just sits there drinking in a log cabin. You know, he's like old Andrew Jackson. And popular vote turnout goes to 80%. In Zoom today, we talked about how this was the time period. And Jackson was the one who really perfected this campaign style of slinging mud, calling people names, making false accusations. Don't get bogged down in issues. People want you to do stuff, promise them stuff. Sure. Go around shaking hands, kissing babies. But when Andy Jackson comes into town, there's going to be a barbecue. There's going to be drinking. There's going to be a party. We're going to sling mud at our opponent. Now, synthesize that. What comparison can you make to that Jacksonian campaign style that became really popular in the 1830s and 40s to modern times? I'm sure you can tell me. I'm sure everybody knows it. It's going to be the biggest idea ever, the greatest form of campaigning. Just ask little Marco and crooked Hillary. Okay? Yeah, just give some examples. Okay? Make promises you can't keep. We're going to build a wall. Okay, not being political, but actually I remember in 2016 when the campaign was going on, I pushed Jackson back a little bit. And I just let my class do it. They're like, oh my gosh, Trump's like Jackson. And they, different things. And I actually read somewhere that Trump really liked Jackson as a president. If you really look at it, Trump's campaign style, if you look at Trump's support in 2016 and where you're more likely to see his support in 2020, it's, people who are frustrated. It's like, states that feel like they've been left behind, like, a lot of support in West Virginia and places like that. Trump won a lot of the Rust Belt states where jobs have left. And think about it. What did Trump do? He mocked opponents. He bullied opponents. Crooked Hillary, little Marco, and that kind of campaign style, played up. It's so similar to Jackson. Except I don't think Trump would do that to Jackson because, remember, Jackson was a tough dude. Okay. All right, we've got one more document here, and then I'm going to open up for questions if anybody has any. The source of this document is Frederick Douglass. Right away. Okay, look, right away. You better be going to author's point of view, right? I mean, it's Frederick Douglass. Maybe you're doing historical circumstances, but dudes, it's Frederick Douglass. He's one of those guys you're really supposed to know. All right, so let me read the document from Frederick Douglass. Okay. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all the other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty and unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciations of tyrants, brass, fronted impudence. Okay, What's the point of view expressed in this document? Hit me up fast on this one, guys. Come on. What's the point of view expressed here by Frederick Douglass? Give me this, and I have one simple other question. What point of view is expressed by Frederick Douglass when he says, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July?" I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all the other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. Okay, Garrett, Douglass is an escaped slave who supported abolition. That's good background. That's good context. Douglass, famous for the abolitionist newspaper, the North Star. But what's his point here? This document's about the 4th of July. And we think of the 4th of July as Independence Day, as the day of freedom and liberty. But according to Douglass, it's like a reminder of cruelty. It's a reminder of hypocrisy. You're celebrating freedom and liberty, and you're making the slaves do the work. And yeah, Alex, slaves are not free. Think of your historical context now. Douglass is giving this speech as an abolitionist during what larger time period? Wake up and tell me. What's the larger thing going on during this time period that is going to prompt the abolitionist movement? Abolitionists like William Lloyd Garrison, Sojourner Truth, the Grimke sisters. Wake up and tell me, guys. Come on. Wake up and tell me. What's that called in America in the 1830s, 40s, and 50s? That we started document 1 with Charles G. Finney. Yeah, Bennett, the Second Great Awakening. So now, you can talk about, again, reference those reform movements. The other thing you could do is, you can now try to bring things together. If you remember, document 3 is the Declaration of Sentiments. It's from the Women's Rights Convention at Seneca Falls. One of the important, famous people who spoke at Seneca Falls was Frederick Douglass, the abolitionist. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, 2 of the people who helped organize the convention. The reason they organized the convention was they were abolitionists who went to a worldwide abolitionist convention. They were denied the right to speak and participate as equals with the men. And during this time period, make the point that you get like this marriage between the abolitionists and the women's rights leaders working together to help each other. And they're going to have this kind of relationship until the 14th and the 15th Amendments come along, when black men get citizenship, black men get the right to vote, and women get nothing. But again, think of these docs. I gave you document 1 about the Second Great Awakening. In document 2, I gave you Andrew Jackson with the Indian Removal Act. In 3, I gave you an excerpt from the Declaration of Sentiments about women's rights. In 4, hey guys, more people are voting. And in document 5, we get Frederick Douglass saying, man, how can you talk about liberty when you got slavery? What's your essay going to be about? What's your thesis going to be about? Let me say that again. You got 5 docs. I need to be a very happy teacher. Please let me go to bed happy and not, because I've been stressed out. Look at all the gray here, man. And it's snowing outside in May. So be nice to me. 5 docs. I'm going to say it again. Here's your exit ticket. And I don't care if it's great, fabulous, or okay. Give me a thesis. That's all I'm asking from you tonight. Type a thesis in the comments. So here's your 5 docs again. Document 1 is from Charles G. Finney talking about the Second Great Awakening and how there's 2 sides here. You either side for God and reforms and fixing the problems of society, or you side with the devil. Document 2 is good old Andrew Jackson talking about the removal of Native Americans. Document 3 is the Declaration of Sentiments. Women saying, here are the rights that men have constantly denied women. Document 4, voter participation. Yay, more people are voting in America. More people are allowed to vote. Document 5 is, what is the 4th of July if you're a slave? I'm asking a lot from you tonight. I know, but we only got one more of these left. Give me a thesis. I'm not looking for style points. I'm looking for you to show me that, hey, Mr. Esch, I know why these 5 documents are here. I know what these 5 documents kind of have in common. A document about the Second Great Awakening, how we're either fighting for good or we're fighting for bad. There's no in between. A document, Andy Jackson saying, if you're an Indian, we're kicking you out off your land. A document, women saying, these are the rights that have been taken away from us. A document saying, hey, more people can vote. Or a document saying, well, what's the 4th of July if you're a slave? Come on, guys, you can do this. I believe in you. I got faith in you. You're going to want to do this for me. After the AP test, wait till you see the really fun, easy assignment you're going to have a lot of time to do. www.notstressed.com. So again, let's see here. Garrett, although slaves and women continued to be denied their freedom in the first half of the 19th century in the United States, citizens ignited social change, the Second Great Awakening, and increased voter participation. Dude, love it. Yeah. The whole idea is during period 4, again, which runs from 1800 to 1848, and if we go more narrow, more specific, during the time of the Second Great Awakening, or if you want to call it the Age of Jackson, Americans fought to push closer towards the idea of equality, as evidenced by increased voter participation and the movement towards universal male suffrage. Further evidenced by the push for women in America to try to gain equality, as illustrated at the Seneca Falls Convention. Remember, your thesis can be more than one sentence. However, despite these efforts, America still continued to fall short because of continuities that denied individuals their rights, as evidenced by the Indian removal policy of Andrew Jackson and the continued presence of slavery in America. Something like that. If anyone have any questions for tonight, we went long, I know, but I'll stay on as long as you want. If I see a question typed in, I'll answer it. So I'll wait a minute. I'm going to take a sip of my lovely beverage here. I think I've gone through more packets of, Diet Iced Tea, Crystal Light, or whatever the heck it is, the Weiler stuff, than anything. I'm running out of stuff to drink in my house. All right. Well, if nobody has any questions, I will actually, when I get done with this, I'll send out 2 links. There'll be a Zoom meeting at 10 and one at 1 tomorrow for anyone who wants it. I will send out the link for the YouTube Live tomorrow at 7. And please, guys, any questions? I sit by those gosh darn computers. I'm actually using 3 different Chromebooks. When the battery dies on one, I just go charge it. I'm here. Hit me up on Google Hangouts. Email me. Okay? And until then, log off and plug in your Chromies, homies.